What if the best thing that you can be, no matter how much the world changes around you, is yourself? Do we forget the power of our values in a world that begs us to compromise? And is authenticity the best thing to carry us through life's darkest moments? In this episode, you'll learn how Forrest Gump from 1994 shows us that staying true to your values in a changing world is worth more than fitting in as someone that you're not. Welcome to the Fandom Portals podcast, the podcast that explores how fandoms and film can help us learn and grow. I'm Aaron, a teacher and a lifelong film fan, and each week on the podcast, we explore the stories we love to learn more about ourselves and the world that shapes us. Today, I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Brash.
Hi, Bubba.
He calls me that because I'm his best friend. But this episode, as you heard, we are definitely doing Forrest Gump, made in 1994. But before we dive into anything like that, this is our 50th episode. For 50 episodes, man, it's a long milestone to get to 50 episodes as a podcaster. Statistically speaking, some podcasters don't get to past the 10 episode mark, and then it's even less it gets to the 25. So happy to be on this journey with you, man. And 50 episodes strong. Here we go.
Yeah, well, hopefully 50 plus more.
Yes, 50 plus more. With that being said as well, this 50th episode, I want to dedicate this one to my mum because, Forrest Gump loves his mum. But also, this movie, Forrest Gump, was recommended to me and shown to me by my mum. And I said, Mum, what do you want us to do for our 50th episode? Because she watches everything that we put in YouTube and also listens on the podcast. She's a big supporter. So I thought we'd do this one for you, Mum. And she picked Forrest Gump. And I think this is one of her second favorite movies or something like that, but I am 100% certain that this is one of my favorite movies of all time. So there's a little glimpse into some bias that you might hear through this episode, ladies and gentlemen that are listening, because I'm definitely a big fan of this movie. It holds a special place in my heart. So just keep that in your brain as you're listening to me talk about this one too. So this one is indeed Forrest Gump, made in 1994. Brash, do you want to tell us what happens in this amazing and awesome movie?
Sure, I can do that.
Lovely.
So, Forrest Gump is the story of a kind-hearted but simple man whose life, though marked by chance and circumstance, becomes a journey of quiet personal growth and integrity. Born in Alabama with a low IQ and leg braces, Forrest faces mockery and hardship early in his life, yet his mother teaches him there is no difference from anyone else, planting the seeds of his lifelong optimism and perseverance. As he grows, Forrest earnestness leads him into extraordinary experiences, becoming a football star, serving bravely in Vietnam, starting a successful shrimp business, and inadvertently influencing major historical moments. Throughout it all, Forrest's defining trait is that unwavering sincerity. He approaches life without cynicism or calculation, following his heart and doing what he feels right. His growth isn't intellectual or strategic, it's emotional and moral. He learns about love, loss, and purpose through his devotion to his mother. His friendships with Lieutenant Dan, Bubba, and his lifelong love for Jenny. By the end, Forrest has transformed from a boy who simply runs through life to a man who understands its complexities, accepting both joy and sorrow with grace. His story illustrates that true wisdom often lies not in intellect, but in kindness, resilience, and the courage to keep going.
That was the best summary of Forrest Gump that I've ever heard. Well done, Brash.
Thank you.
With that, ladies and gentlemen listening, we are doing this movie because one, Mama recommended it, but two, this is our last movie that we're doing in the theme arc that we've been investigating so far on becoming your true self. And our sort of most valuable takeaway that we're looking at, or the lesson we're looking at for this one, is that staying true to your core values in a changing world is worth more than fitting in as someone that you're not. So I think that's rife through this Forrest Gump movie, and it's very much exemplified by the synopsis that you just gave, Brash. But before we dive into anything to do with our MVT and some of the scenes and amazing moments of this movie that teach us that lesson, let's give us your opening thoughts. What's your go-to thoughts when it comes to Forrest Gump?
Extremely quotable.
Absolutely. Funnily enough, I find myself quoting Forrest Gump when it first came out and I first saw it, and probably more frequently after every rewatch, but I probably quote Forrest Gump at least once a week, maybe more.
Easily. either I see someone running and I'm like, run, Forrest, run. Like
Yeah,
every time without fail.
absolutely. I say like peas and carrots. We're like peas and carrots. I say that all the time. The way that I say I love you to Kalia is I love you. Like
Yeah.
I'll say it in that sort of accent. Also, everybody, during this episode, you probably will hear some bad Forrest Gump accents. We're not saying sorry for those.
Yeah.
You'll just
No.
have to deal with it.
Yeah, that's true. Because you can't quote Forrest Gump without trying to sound like Forrest Gump.
The thing that I quote the most from Forrest Gump is like, that's all I have to say about that. I say that all the time when a conversation reaches a natural end. It's just like the funniest thing to say. Well, it's unintentional now. It just comes as like a brain thing that you remember. But, there's also, I may not be a smart man, but I know
Man, but
what
I know
love
what love
is.
is.
Or yeah.
Yeah, well, another one was when he's in Vietnam. I do it all the time, especially like when I used to work on the tools, and like if I ever got like hurt myself, like if I cut my leg or something like that, or if I got like I'm grinding something, a bit of metal like sticks in my arm or something like that, I always be like, I'd say one of two things. I'd be like, I hurt myself, or
Here
or
it
I'd be
comes.
like, ow, something bit me.
Yeah.
Those are the two I use
Yeah,
like,
that's
all the
perfect,
time.
man.
I just I just love that. Like that's like probably like one of my favorite scenes in the whole entire movie,
Mm.
purely because as he narrates what happens, it then cuts to the scene, and he just says the exact same
He
thing
says it in
that he
actual
just
real
says.
time.
So
Yeah.
he's like, oh, it felt like it was just he's like, because he had like I think he had Bubba on his no, he had Lieutenant Dang on his shoulders,
Yeah, yeah.
like the narrator, which is him. He's like, and then it felt like something just jumped up and bit me. And then it cuts to this, like, and you watch it, and then it cuts back to like the sound of that. And then you see his shin getting shot in the ass. He's like, ow, something bit me.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that
Man.
just sends me every time.
That's a theme
Every
that
time.
happens throughout the movie. They've done that like intentionally. Even like the way Forrest is narrating, he does it when his mum says stuff too. So when he comes back to home after his ping pong adventure, he goes, "While I was away, Mama had lots of visitors." And then it cuts over and it says, "Forrest, while you were away, we had lots of visitors." Like it does that the whole time. So
Like, it's like, yeah, because he's so,
simple.
yeah, sensitive, and just like, just, he's so, because he's just so literal with everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, if someone literally tells him something, the way he describes it is literally how they told him.
Exactly. Yeah. And even like some of the advice that his mum gives him all the time, like, stupid is as stupid does, that
Yeah.
comes out very often. It's almost like he is so true, as our theme marker is talking about now. He's so true to his core values and the lessons that he's learned and the wisdom that's been imparted to his mother that he carries that through every single episode or season of his life, which is why we kind of picked this movie because our previous ones have been talking about characters that are in development and they're trying to get to and reach their true self or their true potential, like Walter Mitty was. Whereas Forrest Gump, he developed his core values at a very young age and he carried them through almost every aspect of his life. Not like he was locked in like a childhood state, but he did change and grow over time. But his core values of like loyalty
Yeah, he's
and
just
kindness and love.
stuck the
Yep,
whole time. Throughout his
exactly.
whole life. He's just the same values for the whole, like, nothing, even though there was things there that tried to tempt him away from his normal core values, he always stuck with them.
Yeah, and like reframed himself or his situation to go back to those core values as well, or reframe the situation around him so he could exemplify those core values that he had. So one thing that initial thought for me as well when I watched this movie young was that it was one of my favorites to start with, insanely quotable, but it was also one that sort of made me feel like it was a heartfelt movie, that it was warm. It always makes me cry. I've seen it like more than 10 times and I've cried every time, sometimes at the same places, sometimes at different points. But also, a rewatch when you were young to now, it sort of hits me different in terms of the way I view characters. And I think we'll get into it a little bit more later. But just to touch on it, for example, there is a large community out there of people that watch Forrest Gump that really don't like the character of Jenny because of how much she um, like is seen to take advantage of Forrest, for example. And I know that you're one of them.
But I love you, Jenny.
Yeah. So I think when I first watched it, and definitely through my teenage years, I was like, what an absolute horrid person. But watching it like for the last few times as an adult, you kind of get to see, and I think everybody does as well, the reasoning behind a lot of Jenny's actions. So one of my initial thoughts was that it ages well, but there's more that you can see through it when you rewatch it a second, third, fourth, or fifth time at different points in your life.
Like for him, Jenny was the one. There was no other. There was one. Like there may have been other girls between outside when Jenny wasn't there,
Mm-hmm.
but for Forrest, there was only one person in this world that he loved probably more than as much as his mother.
Yeah.
And that was Jenny. And I think that's one of the things that has stuck with me with my life.
Yeah.
I think like there's one person out of everyone else that's the one for me. There have been others because we were never together or anything like that, but there's always just been the one. And that's it. It's like that moment where you like, I think the same moment with Forrest, there's a moment like the first time she steps on the bus and you just
Yeah.
bang in love. And it's just the same
Yeah.
for me. Like seeing it and bang, that was it. That was it for me. I was done, cooked, toast.
Exactly. It's a really good scene in that moment too, because it sort of, you can hear in Tom Hanks's narration how enamored he is by that situation. Like he says, I remember the bus ride the first day of school very well. And he goes, you know, it's funny what a man can recollect. He doesn't remember his first Christmas or when he was born, or his first outdoor picnic. But I do remember the first time I heard the sweetest voice in the whole wide world. And that was obviously Jenny. And I think that the reason that he liked her and attached to her so much was because as she sort of chose him and saw him, after everyone else sort of rejected him, he sort of sat down on that bus next to Jenny and she would ask him questions and he would answer the questions like that. And he's even said, like, nobody ever asked me questions or was interested in my life before that, except for mum. And just through that human connection that he had, he realized that she had like a beautiful soul from seeing her in that way. Like, people can look at somebody and feel particular connection, but he felt that and then went even further and just investigated her as a person, as who she was, not not what her background was or anything like that, but they sort of connected on that very human level. So I think that was a really sort of well played out scene. And I also think it's synonymous with things that happen in the rest of this movie, because in lots of different social situations, Forrest is like shunned from lots of different parts of society, but he kind of finds the people and the places where his core values are loved, for one, but also where his strengths and his skills can allow him to flourish. So that's sort of like the start of this movie where he meets her on the bus, but I think it's also an allegory for the rest of his life. But one thing I will say before we move on from this is this movie, when I watched it when I was like 10 or 11 years old, when I first saw it, it actually taught me like the chronology to some American history things that I didn't even know about before. Like whenever I think about something that happened in American history now, I think back to the order that it happened in Forrest Gump, because I'm like, when did that happen? Was that before or after the Vietnam War, and just sort of presidential runs as well? So I'm like, who came before or who came after? I remember that through remembering Forrest Gump and, the order in which, for no particular reason, somebody shot that nice man. Yeah. So I think the biggest question this one raised for me when I watched it this time is the question of like, everybody is calling like Forrest an idiot or stupid, but he always sort of comes out on top. So it raises the question for me, like, what is an idiot really when you're looking at it? And especially during those times in America where everything was kind of changing and everybody was attaching themselves to various different sort of facets, and lots of information was coming at people, and there was extremists on either side of it. It's like, what is an idiot here? Are we talking about somebody that sort of follows a coup or a crowd, or are we talking about someone that sort of stands true to their values and makes their way through these tumultuous seas? So I think it's very philosophical, this movie, for one, but also I think it's very thought-provoking as well.
Yeah, because it's hard to define. Like, it makes it hard to define what an idiot is after watching Forrest Gump.
Absolutely. Because, you can call him an idiot all you want, but he's got more money than David Crockett. So what are you going to say about that?
He's happy on his lawnmower.
And, he's stuck to those core values all his life, and that's what sort of got him into this space. All right. So our MVT for this week is obviously that staying true to your values in a changing world is worth more than fitting in as someone that you're not. And through this movie, we're reminded that Forrest used his integrity and his authenticity as an anchor, when everything else around him is shifting and changing, especially through like American history between the 50s and the 70s when this movie is set. So his success, his love, his relationships, it's all followed by meaning, and it's like blended into all of these historical events that happen. But he kind of learns that standing firm in who he is the biggest key in his happiness, for one. And that doesn't mean like bad things don't happen to him, but as they do, he's able to navigate his way through them by leaning on who he knows that he is. So life's changes are inevitable, but his values and how he fits into this world and how he sees himself in this world is a fixed sort of point. And when the world bends, it's sort of, and everybody around him does bend to meet his sincerity as well, which is one of the things that I loved about this movie too, is that every character that Forrest is introduced to is sort of changed through meeting him.
And I think one of my favorite parts of him just sort of going with the flow and just being a part of it is when he first joins the army.
Oh yeah.
Like the drill sergeant yelling at everyone, and then he goes to Gump and he's like, what's your sole reason of being here? And he's like, to listen to what you have to tell me. And he's like, well,
Yep.
goddamn, that's the best answer I've ever heard. You must have an IQ of 160. It's like, all right.
I think that's a really good point, because that goes back to him having like that core value of knowing what his strengths are, and he knows that he's really good, or he finds out that he's really good at doing things where there's one goal and one operation. So because he even says, you know, when he joins the army, I really like joining the army. It was like a round peg fitting in a round hole. All you have to do all the time is, you know, make your bed, keep your place clean, and every time somebody asks you a question, you always answer it with "Yes, drill sergeant." And then
Yes,
that's
drill
one of those
sergeant.
other times he cuts to when he says "Yes, drill sergeant." But
Yeah, it's like, is that clear? Yes, drill sergeant.
absolutely. So I think that in this sort of instance as well, it plays to his strengths where he doesn't really get social context. Like Forrest doesn't really get social context when it comes to all of the things that are happening around him. Because when he tells Jenny he's going to Vietnam, he's like, it's this whole other country. Like he doesn't understand why the war is happening. He just knows he has to go there. But if he has like a one-track mind and one job, he does it to almost perfection. And again, it occurs when he goes and plays ping pong, because when he gets taught ping pong, the guy that teaches him says, all you have to do, the most important thing of ping pong is you never take your eyes off the ball, and you watch as he moves the ball. Forrest like locks in and he moves and watches the ball as well. And then he's literally a genius and an amazing person at ping pong too. And then again, when he starts mowing the lawn, he cuts that grass so perfectly because it's literally one item, one job, one thing to do that he's just really good at. He finds himself that he's got tactile intelligence. He's good with his hands. If it's got a simple operation, like he plays towards his strengths and he doesn't try to be anything that he's not in that space too. So
Ping pong. All you have to do is return the ball.
Hit it once it's got hit back.
Yeah, and like, and the fact that he's so nonchalant, like he's when Lieutenant Dang's like, Lieutenant Dang got me invested in some kind of fruit company. It was for like Apple.
Because Apple.
And so he's like, and so I got a call from him saying we don't have to worry about money no more.
Yeah, I think that simplicity of him, and you know what actually pointed it out to me the most was when he was talking about all of the people that kind of got shot, and he'd say, you know, for no particular reason at all, somebody shot that nice man, and that tells me that like he doesn't base people's value on who they are. Like there was a president, or Elvis Presley had a heart attack in the movie as well. Like he doesn't base people's value on what they are or what they do. He looks at who they were as a person, and that's sort of one of the defining values of Forrest as well. Like he doesn't get that social context, but at the same time, he's got this simple view of people instead of broader society, which also seems to cause a lot of conflict in the movie and in human history, because you'll notice that Forrest does navigate his way through lots of different conflicts, like bullying at school, and then obviously in the army through America's involvement with Vietnam. And then when he comes back from Vietnam, he's even in conflicts there where there's protesting happening. Like he's happy to be home, but there's even a fight on the homeland in terms of America where there's lots of protesting. And then he interrupts the Black Panther Party, and then there's that sort of racial war that's occurring. So he's always in these spaces of conflict, but he's kind of oblivious to it because he's just seeing people as people. And he's just sort of working through different sort of social situations as best he can by leaning on his values of like honesty and integrity and personal recognition of people where he can and love as well that was instilled by his mum. So I think that was definitely very important in terms of Forrest's navigation through America. I think it's like his values definitely came from his mum at an early age.
I was just thinking, like, one of the values that his mum taught him that probably made him such a great person and not a selfish or and a generous person was when he does get all that money and he quotes something that his mum said, and he's like, "Mama said there was only so much fortune a man really needs, and the rest is just showing off." And then he gives like all the money to the hospital, to the church, and to Bubba's mum. And it's like, I gave some money to Bob's mom, and now she doesn't have to work in someone's kitchen anymore. Yeah, so it
Yeah,
just like just shows like, and all of um all of his mum's words of wisdom were always just simple things that realistically everyone should just easily be able to follow.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
It's just like just be nice to people,
he says,
or
just
treat
be
them
a
how
good
you want to be
person.
treated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just be, and then like all of them are just simple.
Definitely shows that he's like a very charitable person too, because I think even he said in that narration, even though Lieutenant Dan said that I was crazy
Yeah,
to
nuts.
give
Yeah,
Bubba's mum his half, he still did it. And that also goes to show like that simple scene shows a lot about his character, because it shows that he made a promise, and he says a promise is a promise when he's talking to Lieutenant Dan about how he's going to start a shrimping boat business. Like he said to Bubba, he'd go 50-50. But then that also rubs off on Lieutenant Dan, who's a very cynical man as well. But he eventually says, if you become a shrimp boating captain, then I will be your first mate and I'll be an astronaut. Like he's so disbelieving of him. But then because he spends lots and lots of time with Forrest, his values start to rub off on Lieutenant Dan. And you do see that he follows through with that word as well. One of the biggest transformations in the movie, and one of my favorite characters, is Lieutenant Dan. We might hit him up a little bit later, but before we do, I wanted to jump back onto some of his mum's sort of values that he introduces early, because one of the first scenes that you see, he's obviously got those leg braces on when we're talking about young Forrest here, and he gets his legs sort of caught in that drain. And once he sort of is assisted out of the drain when lots of people are looking onto him, like laughing at him, his mum walks him down the street and says, "Don't let anybody ever tell you that they're better than you, Forrest. If God intended everyone to be the same, he'd have put braces on everybody's legs." And then, that sort of illustrates his mum's like sort of value that everybody needs to treat each other nicely, whether they're different or not. And you can see Forrest carries that through when he treats like Dan with no legs the same as he did with Dan when he had legs, but
yeah,
also the way that he treats Bubba and any other sort of normal looking person, as Bubba had, like he was born with big gums. So physical difference, or even like Jenny and her horrible background, he'll treat them just as nicely as he treats anybody else. And that's the value that his mum sort of instilled on him. And I think there's no truer line in the movie when Forrest's mum gets sick and she's got cancer. And she says, "I just wanted to be a good mum to you, Forrest." And he says something like, "Oh, you were a good mama." I think that's absolutely true. I think she's really good at instilling those values in, because even in that scene when she's trying to get him into the school, and the principal says, "Your
yeah,
son's different," and then she says something back to him in the something along the lines of, "Well, what's normal mean anyway?"
yeah,
So that's a big philosophical question too when you're talking about people. It's like, what's normal, and who are you to determine what normal is? So
yeah. Yeah,
smart beyond
well, one of the
her.
other lines that go along with the legs, she was saying, she was talking to Forrest and she says, "You have to do the best with what God gave you."
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And like she's saying, like everyone in the world at some point, unless they're extremely lucky, which I doubt most people are, like will have some sort of adversity at some point in their lives, and you just have to do the best with what you got, and
yeah.
that's all you can do.
And Forrest does carry that through as well. And he sort of questions it a little bit too, because he's got like Lieutenant Dan in one of his ears talking to him about his destiny. And he's a staunch believer that he has this purpose, this mission, this path in life that has been led out towards him. And that is what his value is placed upon. It's the fact that his family and his ancestors, for as long as anybody can remember, have fought and died in every American war. and that's what he is going to do. And I want to talk about one of my favorite scenes of the movie now is when he's obviously lost his legs, like Dan's lost his legs, and they're in the hospital bed after the fact. And he's very depressed. Like Dan is very depressed at the fact that he's no longer who he thought he was going to be. Like his ambition and his aspiration hadn't come to pass. And he feels like initially blames Forrest for stealing that from him. And there's that scene where he sort of rips Forrest out of the bed and he complains to him and says to him, like, what am I supposed to do now? There's that scene where he says, you cheated me. I had a destiny. I was supposed to die in the field with honor and you cheated me out of it. He says, do you understand what I'm saying, Gump? And he goes, this was not supposed to happen to me. I had a destiny. He said, I was supposed to be Lieutenant Dan Taylor. And then Forrest Gump hits him back with a very simple answer. He goes, you're still Lieutenant Dan. And on the surface, that seems like a really sort of simple response said by a very simple man, like you're still Lieutenant Dan. And Forrest is like not intelligent enough to grasp the fact that, you know, he's wrestling with this ambiguous concept of destiny. But in actual fact, he said exactly what he needed at the time. Like your value isn't in the fact that you don't have legs. It's the fact like you're still the same person that you were and you can move past this. He goes, so even without legs, it's like, it can be played as like a really dumb retort and a lack of understanding, but I think there's a deeper meaning there that Forrest truly sees who he is as a person because his mother placed that value in him, or he had that value of being kind and seeing people's nature as opposed to what they can do. So I think that he places that value more on who he is and who he spends time with and what he loves about people. And I think Lieutenant Dan has one of the best arcs from a character in this story because he grows immensely from knowing Forrest.
Whenever when I watched as a young kid, he was always my favorite because he was always funny. He was like,
Yeah.
but always got Gump's interactions with Lieutenant Dan were always just so, because Lieutenant Dan would try and go on some tangent and Forrest Gump just always hits him and just is like one-liners just all the time and just completely shuts him down.
Yeah.
All the time.
But I think another quote that sort of Forrest is using very simple responses to sort of fix Lieutenant Dan's situation is sort of during the time when they're spending the celebration and the holidays with each other in New York. Dan says to Forrest Gump, you know, have you found Jesus yet, Gump? And then Forrest Gump replies with, I didn't know I was supposed to be looking for him. And that's like, it's so simple. And you think, oh, he doesn't really understand the question. But really, like, Forrest has always had a relationship with God and Jesus. Like, he's a very faithful man. And his mother was too. So he's like, I'm not looking for Jesus because, like, I know where Jesus is. I have a relationship with him all the time because he's very sure in the fact, because he says later on in that same conversation, I'm going to heaven, Lieutenant Dan. And then Lieutenant Dan says back to him, well, before you go there, get down to the store and get us another bottle of lit. And he's just like, yes, sir. Yeah. And he goes, and because he's in that old habit, you know, that he's lieutenant. But I think that's another example of the fact that Forrest is exactly what Lieutenant Dan needed in that point. He's almost like a grounding point and anchor to return Dan to his core values within himself and not worry about the external that is impressing its destiny, if you will, onto him. Like he had this expectation of what his life was going to be. And Dan obviously isn't going to live up to that, but Forrest was a good grounding tool to sort of help him realize what he could become now. And to finish off our arc on Lieutenant Dan, when they finally get onto the shrimping boat and they're in that storm, I think that whole shrimping boat sequence is, you could look at it as an allegory for grief, really, because, you know, at the start there, Forrest is on his own. He's not really catching any sort of shrimp, but he's still persevering, which is another value that he has, is like perseverance and resilience through tough times. And then Lieutenant Dan comes on with him, but eventually they go through that storm. And the storm can be synonymous with like any sort of trauma or any kind of bad thing that a character is going through. In this case, I think it's definitely the demons that Lieutenant Dan is facing, because before that, definitely very cynical, very much living off the government's tit, as he says, and just without a purpose and without a direction. He goes on this shrimping boat and he says, you know, Forrest says, we always used to follow Lieutenant Dan's feelings. He had a feeling that the shrimp would be over in the easterly direction, so that's where we went. But that's sort of how Dan was navigating his grief. He's just like, I feel like I should be doing this, so that's what I'm doing. But then he sort of consciously went ahead and sort of weathered the storm, faced it head on, like faced his trauma and his grievance head on. And then in the end of it, it sort of says, what does Forrest say? No, Lieutenant Dan actually says in that moment, Forrest, I never actually thanked you for saving my life. Yeah. And then he jumps in the sea, which you could look at as him like letting go, and he starts floating, as in letting nature take its course, or almost like the feather at the start of the movie floating on the breeze. It's almost like he's let go of destiny and he's taking on that ideal that sometimes we're just a feather on the breeze floating peacefully. And he said, he never actually said so, but I think he made his peace with God at that moment. And from that point on, Dan's life kind of gets a bit better. At the end of the movie, you see him walking again, which is something that he never thought he would do. And he's got his magic legs, and Forrest is extremely proud of him. And he's got a wife to be, and they get that sort of smug little look to each other. But I think that he's very much a character that is influenced by Forrest's authenticity. And I think that Forrest is exactly what Dan needed, is that reminder that, leaning on those core values, who you are is what matters, not what you are. And it's good to have an ambition about what you want to be and what you want to do. But sometimes you also need to sort of let go and make the most of the opportunities that come your way.
Yeah, and in that moment you talked about earlier, when his grief, when he first lost the use of his leg, or lost his legs, in that tangent he goes on with Forrest. I think it's probably a note to point out that one point of what he says is, "Do you know what it's like to live without legs?"
Yeah.
And so like Forrest doesn't bite back with anything, but like he kind of does. He had to wear leg braces to stand, to walk. But I think in that moment, I think Forrest, I think this is how brilliant he actually is. I think in that moment, Forrest knew to be quiet
Yeah.
and just listen and not sort of bite back or say anything or anything like that. He's just being sympathetic.
Yeah. He actually does that a lot through this movie, because if you notice at the start of the movie, when Forrest is young, Jenny does all of the talking, like and she just yammers and yammers, and he says, I could listen to her all day, and he listens more than he speaks. And that's a really good value and trait to have when people are going through something as well. Sometimes they don't need you to fix it. Sometimes they need you to listen to it. It's something that I'm definitely working on in my life, because I'm a fixer. So if my partner comes to me with something that she's sort of worried about, I'll try to fix it. And sometimes she just doesn't need that. She just needs me to listen to her. And I've got to get better at sort of verbalizing what that is. But I actually think that he is really good at being a person who does listen to people's troubles and helps through the action of just like being himself and being there for the people that he loves and showing them that genuine care and showing them that love as well. Because eventually, if you want to say it in a sort of crass way, that's how he sort of breaks sort of Jenny down and gets him to be in a relationship with Jenny, is he just keeps showing up for her. He keeps showing up for her in these moments, and he does the same thing to Lieutenant Dan, gives him a job when he needs one, shows up for him in the holidays when he's down and out. And Dan actually reciprocates that on occasion too, because if you remember the time when they were with the two ladies in the New Year's party, and he says, sorry, I ruined your New Year's party, Lieutenant Dan, she tasted like cigarettes. But Dan says, don't call him stupid, don't ever call him stupid. And then Dan's called a loser and a freak for that by these ladies, and then which is his biggest fear. And then they leave. But Dan sort of stands up for Forrest in that moment, which is something you really don't expect him to do, because
I think it's also because it's something he used to do to Forrest.
Yeah.
There's that moment when he gets the Congressional Medal of Honor, and Lieutenant Dan's like, they gave you a Congressional Medal of Honor, and he's like, they gave you an imbecile, a moron who goes on television and makes a fool of himself in front of the whole damn country a Congressional Medal of Honor. And Forrest is just like, yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love that.
I think that's sort of like him. And then when the women called him that, I think, and at that stage they've become really good friends.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of him trying to make amends for how he used to treat Forrest.
Yeah.
By sticking up for him and being there for him when people try and call him stupid. Same with like Jenny, when Jenny does it too.
And I think that it comes in that line that Forrest says during that scene where he goes, I guess Lieutenant Dan figured at that point there are just some things you can't change. Like he didn't want to be called crippled and I didn't want to be called stupid. And then after that, Lieutenant Dan sort of turns around to him and says, after the party's dispersed and they're sort of sitting there alone in the room, he goes, Happy New Year, Lieutenant, or Happy New Year, Gump, or something, he says. And that to me symbolizes that Lieutenant Dan has started to then embrace a new beginning, because that's what the line has said earlier in the film. It's just like, you can be anyone you want to be in New Year's. You can change anything you like. And I think that's the start of Lieutenant Dan's sort of shift and change, because after that is when he starts to show up for Forrest on the boat, and he starts to actually face his demons and change in a good way as a result of the friendship that Forrest Gump has provided for him.
Yeah, I think, and Forrest is like the kind of friend that I think everyone really wants in a
Yeah.
way. Like, even looking at his relationship with Bubba before Bubba passed on, and how they're trying to sleep in the war and
Yeah.
they're sleeping back to back, and Mum was like, we should sleep back to back so we don't have to sleep with our head in the mud. And then
Mm.
he's like, you know what? I think we're like best friends, like brothers.
Yeah. He says that, doesn't he? He's like,
Yeah.
because we always be looking out for each other like brothers
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah.
And then he's like, and then he goes, I was like, I'm going to do a trip in business after this. You should join me. And then Forrest is like, that sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah. He literally says, okay.
Yeah.
I think that that's a really good point, because he does sort of make that, it seems to us, the audience, that he makes that decision really quickly, because he just says, okay, that sounds like a fine idea. Like you should put more thought into business decisions like that, is what I thought when I watched it. But in the same respect, like, he's spent a lot of time with Bubba. He's a very good judge of people's character as opposed to who they are and what they do. So I think that he knows that that's a really good decision. And it also shows again afterwards his loyalty, and that sort of, a promise is a promise, and he keeps those values carried forward through every aspect of Forrest's life. I think that it calls back as well when he's talking about Bubba being his brother. Remember when he's talking about how JFK was shot, and then a few years later his brother was shot too in the hotel kitchen, and he says it must be hard being brothers. I don't know what that's like. So he's never had a brother, and then he finds one in Bubba and loses him. But then also at the start, he says, he didn't have a dad. Like, his dad took off on him. And he says he holds on to things too, because his mum says in the interview about the vacation, and then he asks his mum, what's vacation? And his dad never sort of came back. And she says to him, it's when you go and you never come back. But in that respect, he kind of looks at Lieutenant Dan as like a father figure in that way too. So he sees all these people that sort of fill this need for him, but he also fills a need for them as well, which I think is the important part, that he carries what he has through this life to help these other people out, but he also finds people that fill the gaps in his as well to help them. I love it when Forrest says, after, that whole thing with Lieutenant Dan meeting him the first time, and, Lieutenant Dan says, are you two twins? And he goes, no, we're not relations. But he says, I sure hope I don't let him down. And that shows his compassion as well. Like, Forrest Gump has this compassion that he's really looking to help people out.
Yeah. And well, I don't know if we want to move on, like, so move towards this thing, but speaking of helping people out.
Yeah. Are we going to talk about Jenny?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we talk about Jenny, let's just give a little disclosure to people. We're probably going to talk about like different kinds of abuse, drug use, that kind of thing. So if that's a trigger for anybody, there's your trigger warning. So yes, let's talk about Jenny now.
So I know you've got some thoughts for people's admonishment for Jenny, and she's not one of my favorite characters.
Yes.
But I understand Forrest's view of it.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the ones that always, and I know, like, because I've seen this in my life as well, but the scene when Jenny's got that date and Forrest thinks
Forrest
that
beats the shit out of him.
shit out of him.
Yeah, you mean the time in the car?
Yeah,
At the start, yeah. And he sort of misconstrues the situation. He's like, he had his hands on you, like that kind of thing. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, mate, he was hurting me. He said, no, he wasn't.
Yeah.
It sort of ruins her her date night.
Yeah.
I guess you call it. But I think for Forrest is that he sort of always knew about her relationship with her dad, so seeing, and he, because he's simple and hasn't really experienced that kind of relationship or situation before, I think for him it sort of clicked in this sort of
Protectiveness.
protective, because
Yep.
he's like, oh, there's a guy on top of Jenny, like what her
He had
father
seen. Yeah.
had done, what she told him of her father. It sort of clicked in this fucking protective mode that he got misconstrued, because Jenny was annoyed at first, but then sort of pretty much straight away forgives him
Yeah. Yeah.
for it.
I think that's a good point, because during that moment, Jenny says, he doesn't know any better. But I think Forrest does have a sort of history with knowing what Jenny has looked like in those sort of situations before, because they did spend a lot of time together in childhood. And he even says, her father was a very loving man, but he's obviously misconstrued that in a sort of different manner. But I think protectiveness is one of his core values as well, that he does that a lot, in terms of, that's why he runs back into the forest to save half of his platoon. That's why he always sort of goes after Jenny. And it's the same pattern with Jenny every single time. She'll be with a guy or some sort of relationship, and then they'll treat her like shit, and he'll come in and be protective of her. And Jenny will always sort of stand up for the other person and say, he doesn't know any better, or she will always kind of accept the abuser back in that way. And that's sort of her pattern of trauma, where she actually sees a genuine connection in Forrest, and that scares her a lot, because she's got this wound that says she's not really valuable. And in that way, she doesn't really want to accept any genuine and pure love that sort of Forrest is giving her in that space. So she accepts the love she thinks she deserves from all these assholes. And in that way, she's sort of defending both herself, but she's also rejecting and retracting from Forrest. But when they're in the dorm room after that scene, it's another time where Forrest just completely disarms people with a very simple answer, where Jenny's like, do you ever dream about who you're going to be, Forrest, in the future? And then Forrest just says, aren't I just going to be me?
Mm.
And Jenny
Yeah.
goes, no, 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 you'll always be you. You'll just be like a different version of you. Like, she's romanticizing it, but Forrest is just like, I'm just going to be me.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jenny wants to be that sort of famous and seen on stage and all that kind of thing. But yeah,
I
Forrest
think
is,
it irks me a little bit too, though, about how Jenny sees Forrest.
mm,
And I think it's that to the point where she's like, where she's saying he doesn't understand. And I think to Forrest's point, because Forrest is like, "What you mean I don't understand?"
yeah,
And I think it's later on when he's like, I may not be a smart man, but I know what love is. I think that was him finally sort of in a way standing, not so like, I'd say standing up to Jenny's
yeah. He's
sort of,
confronting her idea that he's an idiot in
yeah,
space, in the space of like
because
human emotion.
in Jenny's eyes, she probably sees that she's trying to protect him,
Mm,
but in reality, all she's doing is sort of putting him in a box and solidifying the fact that she also thinks that he's an idiot.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's very apparent, yeah, through the movie.
And it's always the way. And then Jenny comes up with excuses saying that, oh, you're too good for me, right? And the whole time he's saying, well, how do you know if you haven't tried?
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the thing that annoys me, I think, the most about Jenny is she to try, like, in her defending Forrest, is also putting him down.
mm,
And like, the fact that it's just Jenny. It's just Jenny.
yeah, yeah. It happens so much through the movie, and as I said before, continuous pattern. It's like when she's singing on that stage with the guitar, and he goes in and he beats those people away, and then they walk across that bridge, and she says, "You got to stop doing this, Forrest." And he goes, "I can't help it. I love you." And then Forrest, like, he realizes in that moment that people can be kind and cruel at the same time, like you were saying. Like, Jenny rejects any kind of connection that he sort of goes and puts toward her, and she runs whenever Forrest gets close. So he literally just said, "I can't help it, I love you." And the next thing Jenny does is she threatens to jump off the bridge, and then she gets in a stranger's car. So she's got this reaction to anybody showing any kind of affection to her that is extremely like, no, 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 get away. And, you know, she cares, but she's very frightened to open up in that space. And then it happens again when they meet in our nation's capital, when she's like really happy to see him. She's really, really happy to see him. And they have that awesome, like, it's such an awesome scene when, you know, Forrest in his military uniform and Jenny in the hippie outfit sort of hug in front of the Washington Monument. Because I think that's like, that's the value that a lot of people looking back in America sort of wanted. They wanted that peace and they wanted that togetherness and they wanted that harmony. And there was a lot of division between those two sort of parties. And that actual image is like, it's one of my favorites in the whole movies. But I really liked in that scene where she's sort of with yet another idiot in that sort of Black Panther sequence, and he actually like beats her to the, and then, you know, all other elements around Forrest then just sort of disappear. The sound swells to a point where literally the only thing in Forrest's view is getting that guy that just hurt Jenny.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he defends her again, defends her from the abuser, and he shows that view of kindness towards her again as he's confronting and defending her. And then she again says, you know, he doesn't mean it when he does things like this. He really doesn't. And then Forrest says to Jenny, you know, I would never hurt you, Jenny. And then Jenny says, I know you wouldn't, Forrest. Forrest says, you know, I wanted to be your boyfriend. And then Jenny's really silent. She changes the topic to how good he looks in his uniform and how handsome he looks. And then Forrest brings that connection back up and he goes, I'm glad we're together again in our nation's capital. Then the very next scene, that abuser comes back and he goes, you know, last night got out of hand. And then he says the exact same line Forrest said. He says, I would never hurt you, Jenny. He says the same thing that Forrest said. And he goes, you know that. And it's the same words Forrest says, but she believes it from him and not from Forrest because, again, she's sort of rejecting that form of pure love that Forrest is trying to give her. And she says, you know, we live very different lives, Forrest. And she goes, this is my favorite line in the whole movie. She goes, why are you so good to me all the time? And then Forrest says, because you're my girl. And then she says, I'll always be your girl. And then that song Turn, Turn, Turn plays because I think what the filmmakers are saying is that's when Jenny starts to realize and change her perspective as to the fact that maybe I do deserve something a little bit more. Because in the scenes after that, she's definitely still falling into old habits, but I think she's more likely to leave those people. Like she'll go and leave people on her own now instead of Forrest coming and bailing her out of it. So you see her like leave that guy on New Year's, just walk out of the apartment, and she's sort of moving through life on her own. So she's sort of slowly getting better because Forrest keeps sort of showing up for her and showing her that she has value and giving her that unconditional love because he's got a really strong value of loyalty. So I think that Jenny is definitely a character who is a victim of her past, but I do think that I can attest that she does treat Forrest like not very good at times.
Probably one of the biggest things that people criticize about the movie is the boy.
Yeah. Yeah. This...
Um,
Go there, Brash. Go there.
she's like,
Do it.
when
We got to talk about it.
when Jenny tells him that that's his son, and she's like, "Hey, Forrest, look at me, look at me. Nothing you need to do, okay? You didn't do anything wrong. Isn't he beautiful?" Forrest is a bit all over the joint. He's like, he's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But and then just as to himself, and then Forrest's like, is he smart or is he trying to say like, is he? And he's like, oh, he's very smart. He's one of the smartest in his class. But I still stand by the fact that that is not his son at all. No way. No. Nah.
Well, to play devil's advocate on that, I think that it is very convenient that, you know, she goes away and then comes back and he is rich now. He has lots of money and she's in a very dire situation. Like there is that sort of skepticism that comes into people's brains in that space. But I want to view the movie from a good-hearted place, Brash. And to me, when I watched that scene, it was probably one of the most beautiful moments from Forrest, whether it is his child or not.
100%.
Like
Forrest is
moment,
100% on the right on that side.
Yeah. So for me, when I watched that and Forrest, his immediate concern straight away was like, is he like me? Like and that's the moment that sort of clicks for a lot of people when they watch this the first time, that, oh, wait a minute, Forrest actually has known this whole time that he has grown up in adversity. Like, there are people that do not treat him nice at all because of his intelligence. Like, he knows that. However, on the surface and to the viewers, until that moment in the movie, it seems like it's just water off a duck's back for him. Like, he just travels through life without a care because he's too unintelligent to realize the impact of it. But in that moment, you see he doesn't want his son to grow up with the same challenges that he had in terms of his intelligence, but also through society, because he knows that he wasn't treated so well. He knows it was hard for him to make friends. He knows what it feels like to get on a bus and have 7 people be like, don't sit here, you're weird. And he didn't want that for his son. So that was the immediate thought that came to his brain. And I think that, one, shows his actual emotional intelligence. And 2, I think it also goes back to his core values of being so empathetic and caring, that he then extended that to this boy who he didn't want to suffer through the same challenges he did. So yes, there might be some paternity questions between audience members there, but for me, I liked it because that's what it sort of showed me from Forrest's side.
Oh, it makes Forrest look like a saint, and
Absolutely.
that's the thing. Like, it's just something Forrest would do, like, especially for Jenny. But he'd probably do that for anyone,
Yeah,
really.
I think so.
But I know, because Jenny is sick from her sketchy
Okay.
past, and she is dying.
Mm-hmm.
So this is sort of a way that she knows that at least she knows her son is going to get taken care of.
Yeah, by the best guy she knows too.
Exactly. And
Yep.
like, once Forrest puts his mind to something
Mm-hmm.
like that, and like you said earlier, when like he's simple tasks, like
Yep.
his
One
task
goal.
now is to look after that kid, and
Yep.
that's what he'll do. But I think it's just such a shitty thing to do as a person, to, like, I know Forrest would be happy to do it no matter what, but to put someone in that position, and it even
Yeah,
goes
because he
far.
would
It
never
goes
say
even
no.
goes far as, like, he would never say no. Even
He'd
if she
never say
had
no.
said, "This isn't your son, he's my son, but I'm not going to be around anymore. I need you to look after him for me." He would have been like, "Yes."
Yep, I'd do that.
But
Absolutely.
the fact that she's like, "It's your son," I was like, do you really want to go out that way? Do you really want to go out that way? Like, you're about to die, and the last thing you're going to say to the man who's loved you for your almost entire life, you're going to lie to him. I'm like, that always just rubs me the wrong way. You don't have to.
Well, I'm in the camp that boy is definitely Forrest's son, just because I want to believe in love and magic.
I want to believe in love and magic and fairies.
Absolutely. But, I'll give it to you this way. So I'll put Jenny's journey in a parallel with a small part of Forrest's journey. So, because Forrest deals with a lot of loss, but he kind of travels like a feather on the breeze through a lot of it and gets through it based on his core values. But at some point, it gets to the time where it's more than he can bear. So he loses his mum, and then Jenny obviously leaves, and he gets up and he starts running. So throughout this whole movie, if whenever I was going somewhere, I was running. Like, he literally uses running as a tool to get from point A to B, but also as a means to sort of progress forward. And it gives him lots of opportunities in life. But in this case, it can be seen as a metaphor for, like, when sad things happen to you, sometimes you just have to go into that survival mode, take that one step forward, and just do the things that you need to do. He says, while he was running, I thought a lot about Mama, I thought a lot about Bubba, I thought a lot about Lieutenant Dan, but most of all, I thought about Jenny. And then during that time, sort of, Jenny gets herself together and she gets a job and she obviously has a son. But I think the key moment for this is, previously when we've seen Jenny leave Forrest, she'd get in a car and she'd be obviously running away. But this time she gets into the cab and she says to the cab driver, who says to her, "What are you running from?" And she says, "I'm not running." And I think that shows the audience that in this moment, she still has some growing to do and some things to get past, because it goes back to what Forrest's mum says. You have to put things in the past behind you before you can move forward. And I think that's why my run or what my run was all about. So Forrest had to do the run to get over the fact that, he'd lost Bubba, he'd lost his mum, and Jenny had walked out on him. But Jenny had to move forward in her life in a different way too, to get over the things in her past as well. So yes, that journey could have been done together. And I know a lot of people do go through that sort of aspect where they grow together and help each other. But I think in this particular story, in this instance, Jenny knew she had some things to get past from her trauma from before. And I think she sort of needed to move and get through that before she felt like she could be deserving of love from Forrest. That's my opinion of it, I think. And I think it's similar to the story that Forrest needed to go on that run for 3 years, 26 days, whatever it was, so he could get past the things that he needed to, so he could be the father that Forrest Jr. would need him to be, even though he didn't know about him at the time. But at the same point, that sort of run sequence was said to have given people hope. And he goes, I don't know about that. But he ended up getting a lot of company. And that goes back to the point where like he's just simply doing what he needs to do in an environment that is consistently in conflict and with people looking for various different sort of powers or ideas to attach themselves to. And he was just continuing to do what he needed to do in terms of his values. Like he needed to sort of step forward. He needed to progress. He needed to lean back on those things of loyalty that he was talking about and determination and resilience that has carried him so far as well. And everybody wanted there to be a meaning behind it. But in the end, he just goes, I'm pretty tired. I think I'll go home now.
Yeah. And it's sort of, everyone was sort of like, just stops and just like,
yeah, and they literally couldn't believe because they were just like, are you running for world peace? Are you running for this? Are you running for that? He's like, no, I just felt like running.
And then he's like, and everyone's like,
yeah,
and
exactly.
He just walks off, and then everyone else is sort of just like, starts just moving off as well.
Yeah. But then, before and after that, they're talking, you can see on the news broadcasts and things like that, there's still conflict going on in the world. So Forrest is still remaining that sort of true, ambiguous sort of person to himself. But I really do think that both Jenny and Forrest at that point in their life had some things that they needed to get past. And it goes back to that quote that his mum sort of said, you have to put the past behind you before you can move forward. It's like bringing old shit into a new relationship. Some people say that they need some time before they jump into something new. Like I think it's that sort of concept if I'm looking at it optimistically, but also you could look at it like Jenny was a bitch and she took off.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, because for nearly every point when she rocks up into Forrest's life, it's only when she needs something or needs money.
Yeah.
Like, at no point does, even when after the run and she's like, oh, do you fix my life? The only time she goes to Forrest is to palm off her son because she's dying.
Well,
every time it's just to do something.
In Jenny's defense in that one, she didn't come to Forrest. She sent a letter to Forrest and it was his choice. But previous to that, absolutely. Because even when she rocked up at Greenbow, Alabama, to live at Mama's house again, he even said, I think she came here because she had nowhere else to go. And she must have been tired because she slept a long time. She just slept and slept and slept. And I think there's something to say about the fact that Forrest always knew that he could come home, because after his service in the military was done, he goes, and after my service in the military was done, I could finally come home. And then he goes up to his mama and he says, I'm home, mama. Like, I think there's a lot of value in knowing that he had that safe place to sort of venture out and then come back home too. And he then offered and extended that to Jenny, who, gave her that safe space, and she went out and she took off and did what she needed to do. But then they both came back and they had their wedding and their marriage. So I think that this, if nothing else, is a story of, at least on Jenny and Lieutenant Dan's part, they're growing through some things that are very hard human-wise to deal with, and they're doing it through the help of somebody who sees things in the simplest form possible. And sometimes that's what's needed. You need to strip back all the layers and all the social expectation, and you need to think, okay, what's good for myself? And Forrest is the exemplification of that. Like, he's loyal, he's steadfast, he's resilient, he's true, he's loving, he has faith in a higher power, he's kind to all his friends, and he's also kind to you no matter what you look like or where you come from. And he sort of embraces the fact that his life is going to be what it is. It's almost like that proverb that goes around how the present's called the present because it's a gift for right now. Forrest is the embodiment of that because he doesn't think about the future. He literally, like, ping pong took him places. And then after that, after ping pong happened, he used his ping pong endorsement to get a shrimping boat. Like, there was very little plan in how his life sort of unfolded. And I'm not telling to our listeners to just, wait for things to show up on your doorstep like Forrest did. But I think there's something to be said about.
Well, so he didn't even. Well, it wasn't about him really waiting and things.
Yeah.
Doing. It was him just doing things, and then as a consequence of those things, other things happened. It was just
Opportunities arose.
Things. Like, he was playing ping pong, he's really good. Someone's like, "Oh man, you're really good at ping pong. You should play professionally." He's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
It's about,
literally
it's more
embrace
like
the opportunity that came.
exactly. Is it like opportunity presented itself? He took the opportunity and it paid out. But for me, Lieutenant Dan and Jenny are two sides of a coin. In Lieutenant Dan's side, he sort of embraced Forrest and sort of Forrest's friendship and love, and sort of came out the other side pretty well off.
You could say healed, yeah.
And sort of, yeah, and he sort of went from his depressed, suicidal state to getting his magic legs and getting his wife. And then Jenny, until the very end,
she's the cautionary tale, isn't she?
Kept rejecting rejecting Forrest, and it sort of kept, and she kept driving her down and further into a darker place. It's about, so Forrest is sort of like the light, and Lieutenant Dan embraced that light and stopped herself from drowning, and Jenny rejected the light and ended up drowning further.
Yeah, that's a really great way to look at it too, because I can definitely agree. Like, Jenny definitely rejects any sort of attempt until it's too late, but then she then lives with the consequences
it's
of
too
her
late.
action.
And then I think she realizes that it's too late for her, but it's not too late for her son.
Yeah.
And so it's like hitches his wagon to Forrest, because she knows that if she did this, he's going to have a good life.
And in that way, you could say Jenny sort of stops the cycle of abuse, because obviously her father imparted that to her, and Forrest has all of these sort of values that embody self-worth, that embody like a true sort of spirit that she obviously wants her son to replicate through his life as well. So through that, she kind of does stop the cycle, and that can be seen as the win for Jenny in terms of her being that sort of motherly presence and fighting that battle on her son's behalf. But I think the ultimate thing that the storytellers did in this movie was that they gave Forrest the choice to go and see Jenny at the end. Like, and Jenny's growth being that she didn't just rock up to Forrest for him to rescue her again. She sent the letter and made it his choice if he came or not. So I think that's the growth for Jenny as well, that she sort of moved past that point of really asking somebody else to save her and fix her problems, and she's moved into the point of, if he wants to, that's his choice. There was no mention of a child in the letter, so I will not have you say that she lured him there. No. That being said, she knows him well enough.
No. She did lure him there because she sent him a letter. What point would you ever think that Forrest would not go see her?
Absolutely. Okay,
Jenny could do or say anything, drop of a hat, Forrest would be there. So her giving the letter and her giving saying that and saying, "Oh, you don't have to come," was bullshit. She knew he was going to come. Always, every time, without fail, he will be there for her. Because because it's about unconditional love, and the unconditional love that Forrest has for her. No matter what happens in their lives, she is going to be his number one, his girl. Peas and carrots.
So just to be clear, while we end this up right now, you are still in the camp that you don't like Jenny.
Yes, I'm sorry, but yes, I can't I don't think she's a villain.
I think she's a victim of circumstance, for sure.
She is 100% a victim of circumstance. She's a victim of her childhood. She endured things that I don't wish upon anyone. And it is unfortunate that she couldn't see the man Forrest truly was.
I like that because that's absolutely exemplified in that ending scene where he says, will you marry me? I'd make a good husband, Jenny. And then she says, you would, Forrest, and then Forrest goes, oh, but you won't marry me. And he goes, why don't you love me, Jenny? And he goes, I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is. And it's at that point where Jenny's like, okay, maybe I've been misjudging this person because from everything that I know about this guy and from everything that he's been through and every time he's shown up for me and all the ways that he shows up for his friends and all the stories he's told me, it has shown that he has a deep, deep love for the people who he's connected with, a strong loyalty, he's resilient, and those sorts of characteristics, like you could call, like, how can you really call him unintelligent or stupid when he is that kind of person at heart? It just goes to show, like, it's what you place your value on when it comes to intelligence. Emotional intelligence, I think Forrest has that in some sort of way. In terms of like intelligence about world events and things like that, nah, Forrest doesn't know anything about what's going on right now, but he knows about the important people in his life and he knows what connection is and he knows how to be a good friend and he knows how to be kind. And I think Jenny realizes that in that moment. And that's all we have to say about that.
Yeah.
Moving on, let's rate it. So for me, no brainer. It's in my top 4 Letterboxd movies. It's a 5 out of 5, bro. Like, it does have its flaws, but every time I watch it, it's different and it's new. It makes me cry. Not many films make me cry, honestly, and this one makes me cry every time. Love the character of Forrest Gump. Loved it all my life. 5 out of 5. Brash, what about you?
Absolutely spectacular movie. I also really love this movie. It always touches the feels, and as much as the character of Jenny annoys me sometimes, she is vital to his growth and his journey. So I'll have to give it 4 out of 4.5.
Ladies and gentlemen, with our ratings of 5 and 4.5 from myself and Brash respectively, we officially have a new leader of our fandom portals on aboard, knocking off Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 that has been there for, oh my gosh, since June or March? We did a Marvel month, yeah. It's been there for a while. We finally got a new number 1, and it's Forrest Gump, and I'm really happy about it. So I think this is great. I think that it definitely solidifies and talks about it. It's a nice ending to our arc of becoming your true self, because I think Forrest does go through the various different seasons of life, and it's not about being your true self in terms of, I really love playing football, so that's who I am as a person. It's like core value kind of stuff, like he's loyal, he's resilient, that kind of core value that was instilled in him in his upbringing that really carry him through all these things. And I think that this is a really great way to end the arc, because we've looked at characters pursuing that version of themselves, whereas Forrest had the fortune to know and be that. And it's good to see a character in a movie that exemplifies that as well.
It's not even it's not even really the main character who evolves, and it's more so the main character helps everyone else find their true selves and be better. Like, be it Elvis, Elvis, Lieutenant Dan, Jenny, eventually
Richard Nixon as well. Like, he forces him to be honest with the Watergate scandal. John Lennon writing Imagine.
And like, he brings out the best in others who accept that, who accept his wisdom.
Yes. The Gumps are a very wise family. So, guys, small podcasters like us love it when you share amazing things with your friends. So if you got friends that love podcasts, if you've got friends that love Forrest Gump, if you have heard a hot take from myself or Brash, or if you've heard something interesting, feel free to share that with your mate and direct them to our podcast, the Fandom Portals Podcast. We can be found at all podcasting places, and we're even on YouTube. So if you're listening to our voices and you're not seeing our faces, you can go and see our faces on YouTube. And if you're looking at our faces and hearing our voices and you think, I don't want to see these faces anymore, you can go and listen to us on Spotify and Apple and all those places as well. Next week on the pod, guys, we're going to do a thank you episode, which is going to include lots of messages from some of the guests that we've had on here, and also a little bit of a chat between Brash and I about where this podcast has been and where it is now after 50 episodes, because again, we've hit a milestone, we've hit a birthday, so we're going to celebrate with our next episode being one of those. So if you've got a gratitude for us, or if you've got some feedback, definitely send it to our email, which is fandomportals@gmail.com, or hit us up on socials. We're everywhere at fandomportals. And we're absolutely thankful for everybody who's tuned in, whether this is your first episode with us or if you've stuck with us for all 50. We thank you so much. It means the world to us because we love doing this. It's fun. It's a good little outlet for us. And to have some people join us on the ride, that is just awesome. I guess my gratitudes are twofold. One, for hitting 50 episodes for this week. We've hit 50 episodes. That's definitely something I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for our community that has followed us along. I'm grateful for you, Brash, because you're flexible and you're an awesome friend and you're great to talk to about this kind of stuff. And we've gone through heaps together. And this has actually become a really great place for me to sort of share stuff. And I found, I don't want to like put a cap on it or anything like that, but I think that talking through some stuff that we've talked about in this podcast has made me a bit of a better person. It's definitely made me think about some things in different ways, that's for sure. So thank you for that. And my second sort of gratitude is obviously for my mum, who listens to all of the episodes, who watches us all on YouTube. Hi, Mum. Thank you. Brash, gratitudes.
Also gratitude, 50th episode, and grateful for you for inviting me on this journey.
Wouldn't have it any other way, mate.
It's been, I love our chats. Even like before we actually get on the podcast, we just talk about just stuff, and it's just always great.
We've been thinking about hitting record and sending them out, but
yeah,
we don't know yet.
I might do some editing on some of the parts.
Yeah.
But yes, grateful for this whole experience. It's been really great, and I look forward to continuing.
I started this like on my own, obviously, and then I have some guest stars. But then when you came on, it changed and evolved the space into something that I really like it. Like you've done a lot for this pod, Brash. So thank you.
I just talk shit.
Yeah, but we both do it together, and it ends up sounding okay sometimes. So
I really appreciate you even thinking of me to bring me onto it. I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for John Cena and AJ Styles. For those who don't know, I'm a big wrestling fan, and Crown Jewel was here in Perth. And so far, we've had SmackDown here in Perth, and we've had the Crown Jewel, and we've got Raw tomorrow. But so far, the SmackDown was an amazing show, and Crown Jewel was absolutely phenomenal. I say that because the phenomenal AJ Styles and John Cena had their just love letter match in the middle of Crown Jewel, and it was absolutely fantastic. And the crowd, for the most part, for us here, I'm really proud of us, our country, who were there as a people, because the crowd was just made that whole experience even better.
All right. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep loving fandoms, guys. That's all I have to say about that.
But
is that going to be a thing? It's going to be a thing.
So. That's going to be a thing now, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll stick it on.
Also with what's the other thing we would say when we get off topic?
I digress.
Yeah, I digress. Yeah, I digress.
Yeah. We're going to get them on shirts. That's all I have to say about that. See you, everybody.